What's up guys, Zaid here, and today I'm going to be bringing you my list of the best common and rare staples available in Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duels. This video is not only for people that want to make decks on a budget, but just like, honestly for anyone. There's a lot of very strong, generic, common, and rare cards, and I'm going to get straight into this list. I'm going to try to make this video as quick and compact as possible for y'all, and so it's nice and easy to digest, so I'm going to just get right into it, starting with the commons. And this, I think they're like N for normal or something, but I'm calling them commons. And to start off the list, I've got Plague Spreader Zombie. This card is just a cool alternative to something like the Jet Synchron, or I don't know if Glow Bulb's in the game or not. I have to double check that, but it's just a good tuner that you can summon off of your Helky Fibrax if you pick up Helk, and then you want to not have to invest in another SR tuner target. Then I've got Crusadia Reclusia. This card's really cool because it's like an extender, but it's also able to pop face-up back row, which is really good against like decks like Eldritch where they have a lot of floodgates up, and this card can help you play around there can be only one if you're not playing a spellcaster deck. Just extends. And there's also a lot of Crusadias. Every single Crusadia, I believe, in the main deck is either common or rare, and so these cards can just kind of help you fill out your deck depending on what you're building. Are you building like a 60 card danger deck? Well, put in the Crusadias until you get it. If you're building like a dragon deck, you could put in Crusadia Draco. If you're playing a deck that plays Helky Fibrax, you can put in Crusadia Auroradon. Not Auroradon. I don't remember what it's called, but the tuner one. And then next I've got Retaliating Sea. Max C is at 3 in this game, and it's an ultra rare. But this card's also at 3 in a common. So if you're not able to afford your 3 copies of Max C yet, you could put in Retaliating Sea, and then occasionally you'll get to proc the effect to special summon itself if people use a spell card that special summons a monster. And then if they don't, you can just normal summon this, or say you're playing Pendulum, you could Pendulum it. If you're playing, I can't think of another deck off the top of my head that has ways to utilize to special it, but if you can get this on the board and you can link it away, you can search Max C, which effectively, say you can only afford 1. This lets you play 4, because you can like summon it, link away. Next I've got Holding Legs. This card used to see play in like modern Yu-Gi-Oh! And Pendulum decks, I believe. If this card's summoned, return all set spell traps on the field to the hand. And then you could banish it, target a set spell trap your opponent controls. It can't be activated until the next turn. The reason I personally invested in getting this card really quick was this card seems very strong in the decks I'm working on. I'm obsessed with Grass is Greener. And so in a 60 card deck, this is a card that if you draw it, normal summon it, you just, what's it called? You Giant Trunade the board. And now if they have floodgates, they can chain them, which kind of sucks. But any non-floodgate trap is going to be forced to be activated right there or returned to the hand. And then also, if you mill this off a card like Grass, you discard it off a Danger, you banish, target a card, turn it off. It's an MST at worst. Next, I've got this little Danger package. The Chupacabra, Mothman, Ogopogo, and a Danger Response Team. All these cards are common. So if you want to play a Danger package, but you don't want to invest in all the high rarity dangers, or you do want to invest in them, you just can't yet, you could play these to fill the gaps until then. I've also got Chaos Sorcerer, and for a similar reason, not for dangers, but if you want to play the big Chaos boss monsters, but you don't have them yet, you could put Chaos Sorcerer in to fit it. And also, decks like Thunder Dragon tend to play those, and this is also a level 6, and the Thunder Dragons have level 6s, so you can go into rank 6s, like Beatrice or something. Then we already went over Ogopogo. I think Parallel Exceed is a crazy extender to be a common. When you link summon, you could special this card, then summon another Parallel from your deck and make it level 4. A lot of decks can utilize that. Stuff like Praying Kids, Adamancipator are the first that come to my head. But any deck that link summons could play this card. And it's easy 3 cards to put in your list until you get what you're trying to play. And this might just be what you're trying to play. Next, I've got Exodius, the Ultimate Forbidden Lord, I think it is. Yeah, this card has seen a lot of play in Yu-Gi-Oh's past in combo decks. Not only does it recycle your resources, but it's an extender. So if you have a bunch of stuff engraved, you just put it all back, summon this, and now you can continue to play. And if you're a deck that benefits off having those combo pieces back in deck, you can like redo your combo. Say you like go Helk into Despot 001 and do Auroradon gets hand trapped. If you can get Auroradon off the board, you put this down, you put all that back to your deck, you have that play next turn. If there's extra deck monsters that are ultra rare, super rare that you haven't been able to get all of yet, and this card would be a good extender in your deck, then you're able to just recycle those cards and get the extender. It's kind of like a Pot of Avarice, except you can have one monster engraved and it's live, and it also gives you a body. Next, I've got Soul Release. This card's kind of cool. because Eldritch is one of the best decks. Sky Striker is one of the best decks. At least, like, maybe not best, but most represented deck. And this, like, hard counters both of them. Also, if you're playing Striker, it's a spell engrave. So that's kind of cool. If you're playing a deck that benefits off cards being banished, it's an extender for you. Just a lot of synergy. I also have the response team in here. That's just for Ogopogo to make it better. When Ogopogo is sent, you send a danger card from deck to grave. Then, I think, honestly, if you're playing budget, the best route to go off the start is to make a trap deck, because there are a lot of good budget traps. We got Bottomless. This card's not that relevant in regular Yu-Gi-Oh! Anymore, but it has been in the past, and it's still a decent trap, and it's a common. You get it for basically free. Appointer of the Red Lotus. If you're a deck that is hard committing to going first, but you can't afford Solemn Judgments yet, this is the next best thing. Or if you're playing a trap deck. Yeah, you can't Judgment their Twin Twister, their Harpy Feather Duster, but you can flip a pointer and look at their hand. They're forced to chain the twin to the appointer, and then if they do that, they're discarding a card. You get hand knowledge. You know what they targeted. You're going to pick a card out of their hand, and now you have the rest of your traps to choose how you're going to, like, answer it. But if they have Dust or Lightning Storm, you just rip that card right away, and it worked like a judgment for you. And there's Fiend Griefing. This card, if you play a Fiend deck, is insane. And if you don't, it still just like shuffles a card back like a DD Crow. But you could play a card like Farfa. You could send a Farfa to banish their guy. You could send a Fiendish Rhino Warrior, send any Fiend in the game. Just a cool card. Forbidden Apocrypha has not seen play in a while, but this has always been a card that I keep on my radar. You declare a monster card type, Fusion, Synchro, XYZ. If there's 2 or more of those on the field, send them all to grave. And so you could use this against Virtual World. You could use it against like any deck that XYZ Synchros or Fusions, but specifically does one of them in multiples. And then Divine Wrath is a cool like budget alternative for Solemn Strike if you're not playing a deck, or if you're playing a deck that benefits off discarding. And it's sometimes just stronger because you don't have to pay the life points. If your deck benefits, like if you're playing BA, you want a card like this because you're going to pitch Graph, get the effect. And then last in the for commons in the main deck, we have Gravity Collapse. If you control a Synchro, or if your opponent would summon a monster, send a Synchro you control to the grave, negate the summon, destroy the monster, and your opponent can't summon until the end of this turn. And so this card in a best of one format is insane because if you go first and resolve it, you're probably winning the game. If you're playing Virtual World, you're going to send Shen Shen. Shen Shen comes back, and then you're going to kill them next turn. So against any other combo deck, this is going to be like a one-card blowout. And I think that's kind of interesting to play. It also could be an alternative to something like a Solemn Strike because it negates the summon and it's a common. And so it's just a cool auto-win card that is common. And then a couple honorable mentions in the extra deck for budget players are Crazy Box if you play rank 4s because skill drain is at 3 in this format. And so being able to just overlay into something that can beat over Eldritch Golden Lord is really important to me. And in regards to Eldritch, these cards are very good in that deck specifically. The Volcasaurus, the number 35 Ravenous Tarantula, and number 84 Pain Gainer. These cards, number 35 and number 84, also number 77, I forget the full name, but you'll see it soon because I have it in the rare section. These cards give you a play to make off of having 2 Golden Lord, and then Volt gives you a play to make having 2 of the Trap. And then we have Geonator Transverser also. This is just takes 2 effect monsters, so any deck can play this card, and no decks are currently playing this card, so people are going to play into it left and right. If they summon anything in their center zone or in their leftmost zone to you, their rightmost zone, you're able to just make this, put a monster in the other zone, take their monster. So I think those are all very cool extra deck cards to keep your eye on. There are also more specific to certain deck extra deck cards, but I'd recommend looking at them. I couldn't make a list of all the extra deck cards. It would be too much. But I'm going to save this and go check out my rare deck full of them. This is honestly like where the money's at. These rares, there's a lot of very strong rares in here. And I'm going to get right into it. We got Tenyi Spirited Hara. If you play TCG, you know that like Tenyis are insane with the Sword Soul deck. But in this format, this Adhara, you don't have the Sword Souls, but this card is a tuner extender. You open this in your hand, you just special it, it's a tuner. Now you summon any card, make Hulk, do your full combo. We have Herald of Orange Light. Max C's at 3. And so if you're playing a fairy deck, or a deck that just happens to play a lot of fairies, like Drytron, for example, picking this up, if you need counters to Max C, without this card, you would need things like Droll and Lockbird, Ash Blossom, Called By, Nobleman, or Crossout Designator, which are, I believe, all ultras except Droll, which is a super. this is a rare. So if you're playing a deck that can play this, you have a rare rarity counter to Max C. It's a little higher cost than the cards I mentioned, but it's a higher cost in Duel, but you can get that a lot cheaper to actually play now, and it can be in your deck until you get those cards, but it's also a high impact hand trap. Next we have Psy-Frame Delta. Driver is only a common, Delta's a rare, and so I honestly, my theory on this card is if you play 2 Gamma anyways, you should play 1 Delta, because if you were playing 3 Gamma to 1 Driver seems like a fine ratio, but 2 Gamma to 1 Driver doesn't feel worth playing the brick. But if you're already playing the brick, why not throw in 1 copy of Delta? Delta might not on its own be worth the garnet to you, but you're already playing it to play Gamma. And so I think that playing 1 Delta kind of just, it completes the play set of like the 3-to-1 non-garnet to garnet. And also, if you want Gammas but don't have them yet, or you just can't afford any of the high impact hand traps yet, this is a rare hand trap that negates the activation of a spell and destroys it. Spells are some of the best cards in the game. Grass is in the game. There's a lot of insane cards in this game that are all spells. Eldritch, one of the best decks. You can negate their draw cards. Striker negates Engage, which is at 2. Like, against VW, I don't know how high impact it would be, honestly. You could stop the City. You could stop their draw cards. Stuff like that. I really, really like this card. I think you should consider this card, especially if you can't afford hand traps right now. Next, we have the Crusadia, whose name I forgot earlier, or Borea. This card is just a tuner extender that's also a warrior, so you could search it off Rhoda if you needed to, if you play that card already. And this, again, just helps facilitate like health combos. And it's an extender for any deck that could utilize it. It's a level 3. Same with the Reclusia earlier. If you're playing Phantom Knight and you can't afford everything you want yet, these are level 3 extenders you can just throw on the board. Next, I got Shadal Dragon. If you play any deck that sends to grave, this card's really strong. Just get the effect to pop a back row. In regards to back row, I'm going to cover these real quick too. Fire Formation Gyoku and MST. Both rares, so if you don't want to pay for the Super Twin Twisters or Cosmic Cyclones, which I think are ultra, pick these up. If you're playing a deck like Sky Striker, this is a combo piece. Hit your area 0. We've got this Anchimorphite. This card is Upstart Goblin if you don't have an extra deck. So if you're playing a deck that doesn't need the extra deck and you don't want to get ultra rare Upstart Goblins, get this card. Next, we have the Kaijus. There's 5 Kaijus, I believe, that are rare. There's the Dark, there's the Wind. That's not a Kaiju. Or I guess 4 then. And then both Lights. If you're playing like just like any deck, you probably would want to get Godarla because it counters the Wind statue if you're playing against Tri-Brigade Leerlusk. And then if you're playing a dark deck and you play Allure, you could grab this. If you're playing a deck that plays level 7s or 8s, you could grab the one that matches your level. If you're playing a machine deck, grab the machines. Drytron can search this card, I think. Cyber Dragon can search this card. Just a lot of utility. And we have Vishuda also. The Monk of the Tenyi is also a common. So if you were to get this as just like a going second extender, it's an extender no matter what, but if you're going second, special it, make Monk bounce a card, and then continue to do your plays. So it's just an extender that helps you like remove cards going second. In regards to the Danger package earlier, we got Danger Thunderbird, and then I don't have it on here, but the Danger Trap is also a rare. And so Thunderbird is like a cool MST type card, help you get rid of back row, also an extender and a huge beater. So if you don't have Nessie, Jackalope, Tsuchinoko yet, consider playing this card until then. And then this is a really cool one, Zaphion the Time Lord. This card, you can normal summon it if you control no monsters. When it attacks, you shuffle it into the deck, I think. Or no, it attacks, you shuffle all back row on your opponent's field into the deck. And then during your next standby phase, it'll go back to the deck. So this is kind of like a replacement for Harpy's Feather Duster that's only a rare. You do need a normal summon it though, so you need to play it in decks that can facilitate it, but it's an option and it's there. And then we got Performapal Popper Up. If you're playing a Grass is Greener deck with a lot of cards that you don't necessarily want in your hand, a card like this is kind of insane. It baits Ash Blossom, so then your grass can actually resolve. Gets rid of Garnets to dig for cards, and it's only a rare, so maybe you can't afford to get your grass and to get Desires and get Prosperity. Get your grass, get this. It's a rare, play that. Then there's a Dimensional Fissure. This card counters a lot of the best decks. It's only a rare. It counters a lot of hand traps. So if your deck can play this, it's an insane floodgate if you can't afford like skill drains and stuff. Get this. In regards to floodgates too, we got Summoning Curse. If a monster special summoned, the controller of that monster banishes a card from their hand. If you're playing a trap deck, this is cool because you set all your cards anyway. So like if you're playing Eldritch, if you can commit all your cards to the board, even though you're still going to special, you're not going to lose a card in hand because you don't have a card in hand. Whereas you put this down against a combo player, they're going to look at their hand and be like, what the hell do I do? I think that it's not random. Like, they choose what they banish, so they at least can, like, make a judgment on, oh, I want to get rid of this, this, or this. But they're still going to have to give up a resource every time they try to play until they're at no cards in hand. And then we already covered those. Book of Moon is cool. Going first, it's an interruption. Going second, it helps break boards. My Body is a shield. Dryden's at 1. This hard counters that. And I can't think off the top of my head. Oh, actually, I can. Eldritch counters Eldritch because they try to Conquistador pop. You're like, nah, I'll just pay some life points. Striker has Afterburner. VW has the level 9 Synchro that banishes the pop. There's just like a lot of popping effects that you can negate. Then there's Chalice. I think this, like, in real Yu-Gi-Oh!, this is a budget alternative to Droplet already. In this game, I'm probably not going to get Droplets. They're ultra rare, and there's a lot of other ultra rare cards I want over it. This is a rare. This is a 3 of in like every deck I've made so far. And then if you're afraid of VFD specifically, XYZ and Encore is really cool. If in your draw phase, if they don't opt to use the effect, or wait, you have player priority. What am I even saying? In draw phase, you just XYZ Encore, target an XYZ they control. They detach all the materials, return it to the extra deck, and then summon the materials from grave. But they don't get to use the effect of VFD. So they spend their entire turn massing up this board that they're going to then convert into VFD, and they don't even get the effect. You get rid of it, and you just proceed to kill them from there. It also, I believe it would counter the one XYZ, the rank 4, that if it has like 5 materials, your opponent can't summon. So that's something to note. And then on to the traps. Like I said in the commons, if you want to play budget in this game, make a trap deck first. Because there are a lot of very cheap trap staples you can get, which will allow you to allocate your gems to getting draw cards and stuff. And then those draw cards and the other staples you get will transfer to other decks you build, and you could slowly go from there. I plan on doing a budget deck, like almost tutorial, to teach you guys like what decks I think are the best budget decks, and then can transition into more meta decks. And this is how you would start to me. Trap decks. Torrential Tribute is a rare. This card's insane. Needle Sealing, in majority of decks, does the same thing as Torrential. You let them commit a big board, you wipe it. Regeki Break, Phoenix Wing, Wing Blast, same as Divine Wrath. These are insane in decks that like to discard, and they've always been good throughout Yu-Gi-Oh's history. These pop up every couple formats and are very strong. This card helps you out floodgates and stuff. So does this. This sets them a turn back. This removes a card completely. Compulse has always been iffy. Well, it used to be insane. It was at 1. A lot of decks would always play it at 1. But when it came to 3, it stopped being as popular because it came to 3 because it wasn't as good anymore. But as a rare, this card is still pretty strong. Like, you bounce a card, it also helps you play through back row. Say you're against Striker and you're using an important effect. Maybe you have something that blows up their back row and they Widow Anchor it. You can chain Compulse or turn your own monster and resolve your effect. If there's a skill drain out, you Nightmare Phoenix, target it. They're like, okay, that's fine. You're skill drained. And you're like, all right, chain Compulse, return it. In regards to stuff like skill drain too, we got Fairy Wind. With Striker and Eldritch being 2 of the better budget decks to play, you see them a lot in ranked. And against Striker, this outs their multi-roll and any floodgates they play. And against Eldritch, this outs all the floodgates they play, but you can also chain it to them activating Conquistador or Hawkquero, and you'll destroy it in the spell trap zone too. So not only are you going to out their floodgates, but this card's not coming out. And so it's an interesting tech to think of for that. Some of these cards, like Fairy Wind in particular, aren't as strong because there's not a side deck. So you would have to main deck a card like this. But if you don't have like the better back row removal that you'd like to play, give a card like this a try. It's a rare, so it's going to cost you basically nothing to try it, and it might work wonders for you. Next, I've got XYZ Reborn. This could be a really cool card in decks like Zodiac, like VW. Decks that can win the game off the back of one XYZ. If it somehow gets interrupted or it resolves, but your opponent like manages to not die, you can just bring that card back, do it again. It's like an auto win in certain decks. Next, we got Trap Tricks, Trap Hole, Nightmare. This card is like mid, same as Bottomless, where it used to be good. It's not as good now, but it's a cool budget alternative to a card like Solemn Strike. You can set this card, set Torrential, and you're going to have a very similar interaction to like the Torrential Strike, where you Torrential them, they use a negate on it, then you just Trap Tricks, Trap Hole, Nightmare, negate their negate, resolve the Torrential, wipe the board. And so, like, if you get strikes, I would play Strike over it, but this is a cool budget alternative to that. Dynamiscus is a very, very, very cool interruption you can get as a rare. A lot of back row decks should play this. Like, Banish non-targeting, or it does target, but banishing removal is really strong. It also doesn't discard as cost, so you would trigger the effects of cards like Shadal's and Dangerous too, right? Yeah, Dangerous too. And it's generic removal. This card's really strong. Floodgate Trap Hole. This card's a little mid, but again, it's like a cool card if you don't have the cards you want. And it could just like hard answer some cards they have. Lost Wind is really cool, especially with Grass is Greener at 3. This is a trap card that if you're playing a grass deck, you can mill. Same with the Dynamiscus, actually, and you like get value off it being sent to grave, but it's also a strong card to draw. This card works similar to Nightmare with Torrential, where it'll stop the card that would negate the Torrential. And so, like if you're playing a trap deck, say you're playing Eldritch, you can't afford all the big cards yet because you spent your stuff on the engine cards. Get 3 Lost Wind, get 3 Torrential, get 3 Needle Sealing, get 3 Trap Trick Trap Hole Nightmare. Force your big blowout cards to go through. Get 3 Dynamiscus. This will help you deal with like mirror matches where you could banish their Golden Lord, stuff like that. And you're going to be in a good spot, especially for the budget that you're on. And then in regards to back row decks, I also have Magic Jammer. This is another card that could counter your opponent using a, what's it called? You can counter them using stuff like Feather Duster to wipe your back row, Twin Twister, stuff like that. You have to discard, but if you're playing a deck like Eldritch, that doesn't matter as much. You could pitch one of your traps and it'll float. And then the Black Horn of Heaven and Horn of Heaven are 2 other alternatives to a card like Solemn Strike. This, if a monster would be summoned, tribute a monster, negate the summon, destroy that monster. You can do this on normal summons too, so this card's a little more versatile, but it requires a tribute. But if you're playing a deck that can handle that, or if you're playing like the Dynamiscus for the free summon, you can tribute that. You can tribute your Eldritch traps after they popped. I bring up Eldritch a lot. It's one of the best trap decks. It's really cheap. And then if you're playing these cheap traps in it, you literally could probably make the deck having just downloaded the game in like 2 hours. Black Horn of Heaven, if your opponent's specials exactly 1 monster, negate the summon, destroy it. This card's kind of mid. It used to be insane in Yu-Gi-Oh! Though, and so it's a cool card to play on a budget. In regard to the same thing, we have Pulling the Rug. Negate the activation and effect of an effect monster whose effect activated when a monster was normal summoned. This is not the best in this current meta that I don't think it's the best in this current meta, but this is a card to keep on your radar because it could get better as time goes on. For back row decks, you can also play Huge Revolution is Over as a budget alternative to the Solemn Judgment. This is another card that will negate cards like Feather Dust or Twin Twist or stuff like that. And if you're playing combo and you want to play Judgment just to like protect your board, you can replace it with Solemn Scolding. This card, if it's the only set card in your spell trap zone when a monster would be summoned or a spell trap or monster effect is activated, pay 3,000, negate the summon or activation, and destroy it. So it is Solemn Judgment plus Solemn Strike with a flat cost of 3,000, but you can't have cards set. So if your deck can play this card, this is a great replacement for Judgment, which I believe is an ultra rare. Let me double check. I'm on the ultra rares right now. Scroll. Actually, I'll do this. Yeah, so Solemn Judgment's an ultra. You can just get this to replace it if you're playing a deck that facilitates it. You also can get Fists of the Unrivaled Tenyi if you play non-effect monsters. This is another thing that you could play in Eldritch, because the Eldritch traps, I believe at least, are non-effect monsters. Yeah, because you can make Link Spider with them. So this is a card that if you resolved a Conquistador or a Helk, you then can have a Solemn Judgment. And it's just kind of cool to consider these different, there's a lot of different budget alternatives to Judgment until you're able to get it. And then for some floodgates, we have like Light Imprisoning and Shadow Imprisoning. These cards I honestly wouldn't really recommend main decking in a best of one no side format, but they're cool to keep on your radar. If we hit a point where a majority of decks are light or a majority of decks are dark, you could play this instead of having to buy Skill Drain, instead of having to buy There Can Be Only One, Rivalry Gozen. And then lastly, we've got Phantom Knight's Fogblade. Fiendish Chain is also a cheap card, but this card is just better than it. It's a rare, it's effect negation, works like these do. Also, if you play Phantom Knights, it's cool that this card's really cheap. If you want to pick up a Rusty Bardiche and you're playing a dark deck, a lot of the Phantom Knight monsters are low rarity too, so you would have access to some really cheap negates through the extra deck too. And then the extra deck, this is kind of going to be quick because all these are a little specific, but I'll just like say the card, what it's for. You have On Eye's Vortex. This card's good in a Pendulum deck, free negate. World Chalice Guard Dragon, cheap, easy Super Poly target. Dragon Master Knight. Oh, yo, I miss a card. Dogmatica Punishment is also cheap. I almost forgot about that, but good thing this reminded me. Let me hit this button so I can see everything. What the hell? Why did Blue Eyes come up when I searched Dogmatica? Yeah, Dogmatica Punishment is also a rare. And if you want this card, but you can't afford all the cool send targets for it yet, you just bought the Punishment as a rare, you want to try it out, you can get Dragon Master Knight. This card is 5,000 attack and a rare. So you're going to be able to send it, pop any card. Also, there's a, I forget the name of it, but you're typically going to want to play Natis with this card. I spelled that wrong. How is it spelled? N-T-S-S, like that? Yeah, you would typically want to play Natis, but it's an ultra rare, so if you can't afford that, there's like some fossil thing. Maybe Fossil's in the name? Let me find him. This card, only a super rare, and it is similar to Natis where it pops a card, but it only pops a monster. But you could send this, pop their card with the thing, and then on the following turn, banish it, pop a monster. And while it's still a super rare, it doesn't really fit these common rares. It's an honorable mention for Punishment if you can't afford the ultra rare Natis, or if you can only afford one Natis. You can get one of this also. It's like you have two Natis because you can use the Skull Knight when you don't need Natis, and then save Natis for when you need it. And we have Excel Synchron because Jet Synchron's at 1. This is a cool level 5 to consider playing. This card, I honestly don't know why I put in the list. Kind of cool if you play Infernoble. It's cool. It's cheap. Not really generic, though. Starter's Charge Warrior is a cool level 6. If you just need a level 6 Synchro in your deck, there might be better ones, but this is a rare. It draws a card. Also, like if you're playing VW and there's level 6s or 9s you can't afford yet, you can get this card, Hyper Psychic Rider. If this card in your possession is destroyed by opponent's card, you target a tuner and non-tuner with the same type and attribute as each other and add them to hand. And I believe each typing of Virtual World, there's Earth Worm and Wind Psychic. There's a tuner and non-tuner for each, so you'll be able to just recycle a full combo. Money Bud Dragon, also only a rare. Can you use that for this card, actually? You could if you're playing a... oh, no, you can't. It copies an exact name. This doesn't have an exact named one. But this is a cool card. You have number 75. This is actually a really good generic rank 3. I would recommend picking this up if you play rank 3s. If you're playing Virtual World and you can't afford, like, the cross-out designators, the called buys yet, get this, make it before you do your combo. Now you have an out to Nib. That doesn't help you play through Max E, but it helps you play through Nib, Ash, Imperm, stuff like that. Not Imperm, because it negates monster effects, but yeah. This is a cool generic rank 4. Not generic, it takes 2 level 4 darks, but if you're playing a deck that can make it, really cheap, Evil Storm Nightmare. 2 negates when you put it on board. You can once per turn, detach 1, turn the monsters that were special summoned face down. Another generic rank 4, Rhapsody and Berserk, just lets you remove cards from the graveyard. There's a lot of decks that are good like that. VW, you can hit their spells and traps. Against like Eldritch, you hit their traps. Against Striker, you hit their Ray. And you name a deck, I can tell you what to hit with Rhapsody. DD Chrome, the extra deck's pretty strong. And we have Gaga Samurai. This card, you detach, target itself, it can attack twice, so just 3,800 damage. This is cool if you can't afford like Access Code, Boral Sword, but you still want a way to be able to kill on a budget and you play rank 4s. I'd recommend this card. Next, this is just like a little honorable mention, kinda. The Zodiac Engine. Drident is an ultra and Zeus is an ultra, but they both are at limited to 1. So, and every other Zoo card except Thoroughblade is a rare or lower. And Thoroughblade is a really good card, but if you just want to get the 2 ultras, you can completely play this deck. If you just want to get the, one of the 2, then Borbo is just like a generic way to go into the combo. Because none of these take 2 level 4s to make, but there's an XYZ that takes 2 level 4s to make Chakanine. That's a common. And you could just make that, put Borbo, attack direct, make Zeus. And so you don't have to like ball out on cards that'll attack directly to make Zeus. Next, we got Shark Fortress. This is a good card if you can make rank 5s. Good example again, Eldritch. You could summon the Golden Lord at 3,500, target it to attack twice, and hit for 7k with it, and then 24 off the Shark Fortress, and that's game. Nice budget way to go for lethal in that deck. Then we got Cyber Dragon Nova. If your extra deck's not filled out anyways, you can play this. You can find a cheap cheap Machine Fusion. I should have looked at Machine Fusions to see which ones there were, but if you get this, if they summon Maximus, send it, you get the effect. Might as well play the package if you don't have like anything else. Then we have the On Eyes Absolute Dragon. That goes with this Vortex, which gives you the ability, it just takes 2 level 7s, and if it's sent to the graveyard, you can summon this negate from your extra deck. So if you're playing Pendulum, 2 level 7s turns into a negate, very cheap. And then here's the number 77 I was talking about earlier with the other 2. You make the number 34 or whatever it is, and then you make the other one, the Ravenous Tarantula and the other dude, and they both have effects that blow up monsters. One is based off attack, one's based off defense, so whichever one is applicable to you in the moment you use, and then you overlay this on top. It's a 4,000 beater, so it's good under skill drain. It's insane under skill drain. Eldritch is the main deck playing skill drain. Their Golden Lord at 35 can't beat over this. And then if this sticks for a turn and there's not a card like skill drain out, if this face up, oh, also if it would leave the field, you detach one to protect it. And then once per turn, except the turn it was summoned, you could detach two, banish as many special summon monsters your opponent controls as possible, then attach one of them to this card as an XYZ material. So not only do you wipe the board, you banish the board, and if they have a monster who will get an effect that's banished, you attach that one so they don't get the effect. So this card is like bonkers. If you're playing Eldritch in specific, get this card, especially for a budget. It's just insane cheap card to put in your extra deck. 4,000 for Dogmatica Punishment, but has a practical effect. And then lastly, we have the Triple Burst Dragon, generic Link 3 that is like an Armades. Once per turn during the damage step, if a spell trap or monster effect is activated, negate it. And so this card functions as an Armades. You attack Shizuku, negate Ray. Card's just really, really strong. And so I appreciate y'all watching this list. If this helped you, let me know in the comments. Let me know what decks you're playing, what cards you're going to consider using these in, or what decks you're going to consider using these in. And let me know if I missed any. Also, if you want like a super rare alternatives to ultra rare cards video, let me know. That's an idea that I had. I'm also thinking about doing like best budget decks or like how to build specific decks with a budget. And so let me know if you're interested in that. Also, one more question. If I were to do that, right? Say I'm making a budget blank deck. What do you guys consider budget? Like what amount of ultra rares and super rares would have to be in a deck to be a budget? Like, is it 3 ultra rares? Is it 6? Does Max C count towards that? Because everyone probably should have that card. Like, what do you guys consider budget? Let me know so that I could then use that information to make budget guides on this game. And so, thank you for listening to this video. I hope it helped you, and I'll see you guys next time.